YouTube. Today we're gonna go over the Parish team that I've created for Backstock Battles and what exactly went behind the scenes of making this team. Let's get started and roll the video. So why Parish Trap? Now the reason I want to use Parish Trap is because it's always something that I always find fun to play. I liked playing it a lot in Gen 7 and it wasn't really good in Gen 8, especially with Dynamax. Dynamax kind of screwed up the mechanic of it, and no Mega Gengar is pretty huge for no Parish Trap. So I really did want to try it when there was no Dynamax, and I really love Zygarde having 1000 Waves, really cool move that traps in your opponent as well when Zygarde's on the field. So I did have another way to trap in opponent's Pokemon, and Zygarde's a pretty bulky Pokemon in general as well. And Primarina had a fun little niche with Flip Turn 2 for positioning. So I really want to try it out and see how it went. So yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to try out Parish. It's just something that I've always had fun with, and I want to make it viable. So how was the team formed? Now, in order to have Parish Trap, you need a Parish Song element and you need a trapping element. It started off with Zygarde and Primarina. And Zygarde, I really want to use 1000 Waves for quite a while. I think it's a very underrated move. Why does this thing get 3 signature moves? I have no clue, but I think 1000 Waves is a really awesome move for trapping. And then I had Primarina for the Parish Song user. I did consider Politoed at one point, especially Water Absorb Politoed, to deal with like all the Kyogre teams that could have been a little bit troublesome. But I felt like Urshifu was actually a big problem, especially close combat, to protect us a lot when stalling out Parish. So I wanted Primarina instead because of the fact that it can resist Urshifu's attacks. Also helps against Dark Urshifu as well, which is pretty nice. So ended up going with Primarina, and then having Incineroar as the next Pokemon actually, because I do like Incineroar. Fake Out, Parting Shot, Intimidate, and the Fire typing, all great things for Parish, and it's just a really consistent mon in general, and it really does help out Parish because of, again, Intimidate, pivoting, and just a good switch in for a lot of things. Next Pokemon was a Gothitelle. Now, I actually didn't have Gothitelle on my original team. I had Como actually on the Gothitelle slot. And the reason I had Como on the Gothitelle slot is because I had Soundproof Como that could set up Iron Defense substitutes next to Parish Song Primarina, ignore the Parish Songs, force the opponent to switch out, and then start setting up a Como. Because not a lot of things in the meta that aren't like Calyrex teams actually deal with Como super well. Although Player of Zacian has been picking up, but even then you could actually force out Zacians, and then the partners actually don't really do well against Como. But I ended up going Gothitelle. I think there's a lot of different members that I've had on this team at one point, and I think it was just really, what did I really want in it? I wanted to try out Shadow Tag Gothitelle since I did want to emphasize on this team trapping. I actually think that there are multiple different Pokemon you could add on this team overall, but it was just something that I wanted to try out. It also helped against specific matchups, like against Kyogre, for instance. Trapping Kyogre is really nice for the Rillaboom that I added on later on the team. But there's multiple Pokemon I think that could be fit on this team and different ways to play it. So added Gothitelle afterward. Shadow Tag, just of course. That way I don't always have to go the 1000 Waves. And you do have to set up for the 1000 Wave setup sometimes, especially if they have a flying type. So it's nice to have Shadow Tag immediately on the field. Next Pokemon, Rillaboom. I've had a few Pokemon on this slot, Moonblast as well, that I did consider, and a few others. But Rillaboom is really important because of the fact that Kyogre can sweep this team immensely. You do need a way to handle Kyogre, and Rillaboom was a perfect choice, of course. Grassy Surge with Grassy Glide can help if they don't have a Serena. Bulky Pokemon overall, and can just help pivot as well. Fake Out also really works with the Parish Song and the trapping. So, and the grassy terrain also really benefits Zygarde, which I really liked since I wasn't going to use Misty Seed on this team because there was no Tapu Fini. So like having that grassy terrain with the leftovers actually really helped out Zygarde. And then finally, my last Pokemon, I wasn't sure about this one, but I felt like it was a really fun concept wise with what I wanted, which was basically Xerneas matchup really bad. So I wanted a way to help against it. And then the problem with like U-turn is still a thing that they can do, especially with Rillaboom. So I was like, how do I beat this exactly? And I'm like, I need something that helps against Xerneas, and I need something that maybe can stop U-turn. And I looked up Imprison U-turn, and Savali was actually the option that got imprisoned in U-turn and provided an option that would do a lot of damage to Xerneas. And I'm like, okay, I could maybe trap in Xerneas next to Gothitelle and then have some Valor take care of these Xerneas, because multi-attack actually does a ton of damage to Xerneas. So that's what I ended up going with, and that's how the 6 was formed. So let's go over the items, the sets, and the EV spreads of the team. So we got Zygarde first with the Leftovers, Power Construct as the ability, 1000 Arrows, 1000 Waves, Crunch, and Protect. Now I did go Leftovers on the Zygarde because I didn't plan to have like a Tapu Fini or Tapu Lele on the team, and it seemed like the best item to have on Zygarde, being able to heal HP, especially with the Grassy Surge that I added later on, allowing it to heal 1/8 of its HP every single turn, which is always nice, especially with Protect. That's 1/4 of your HP every single 2 turns, which is really nice when you're stalling out for Perish. It's really great. Power Construct allows Zygarde to even gain more HP, which is fantastic, of course. And the ability otherwise when you have Zygarde is very situational if you're facing a Yveltal or Xerneas team. So Power Construct is a consistent ability. 1000 Arrows, 1000 Waves, Crunch, and Protect. I had 1000 Arrows and 1000 Waves because he needed for the setup for Perish. 1000 Waves to trap, 1000 Arrows in case they are a flying type or levitating mon and you do need to ground them in order to hit them with 1000 Waves. And Crunch mainly for Calyrex teams, because I think Calyrex is a very scary Pokemon. Doesn't get trapped by Gothitelle Shadow Tag, and of course just does so much damage. So I did go with Crunch for Zygarde just to deal with the Calyrex specifically, and Protect is pretty self-explanatory. So the EV spread, 196 HP, gives Zygarde an HP stat of 208. This basically is an even number that allows Zygarde to gain the maximum health from Leftovers and Grassy Terrain, and always make sure that I can gain 1/8 of my hit points every single time a Leftovers plus Grassy Terrain heals. Then the attack, 84 Adamant. This is the minimum to always KO a Shadow Rider Calyrex with Crunch. At 52 defense. Now the reason is I really needed special defense because Kyogre still does so much damage to Zygarde. It's actually insane how much damage it does. I still live like Behemoth Blade from Zacian, and I'll live it with Intimidate with Incineroar combination, so I didn't feel like I needed that much defense, but I really needed special defense, especially for certain moves. Again, Kyogre I think is really scary. Calyrex can be really scary, so I wanted to make sure I had a lot of special defense, which is why I went with the 172. And then for speed, really this team doesn't have any reliance on speed. There's no speed control at all with this team other than drum beating, and even then that's not really a method I use for speed control at all. It's just for a move to hit Kyogre under the factor. If it has Serena with Queenly Majesty, I do need a move that can hit Kyogre. So that is the reason I don't really invest much speed in this team in general. Primarina, the Perish Song user of this team. Sitrus Berry with Liquid Voice, Moonblast, Perish Song, Flip Turn, and Protect. Now Sitrus Berry was the item of choice here because I already had Leftovers on the Zygarde. I tried to think of it if I really want to resist Berry, but I already had to switch into Eliki with Zygarde, and Primarina is already pretty bulky, especially the specially defensive one that can already take a Thunderbolt from most Elikis that aren't like Choice Specs or Life Orb Thunder boosted attacks. So overall, I felt like I didn't need Walk On Berry. I thought about Rindo Berry, but I felt like I could just switch into Instant most of the time anyway. So I never really thought I got much utility out of it. And since Primarina is my only Perish Song user, longevity is very important. So I ended up going with the Sitrus Berry. The ability, Liquid Voice. This is a mistake here. Now, originally I thought I didn't have a water move. For some reason I thought Flip Turn was like U-turn in my head. I don't know why, but I literally just glanced over the fact that Flip Turn is a water type move. So Torrent is the better ability. Liquid Voice does turn Perish Song into a water type move, but it really doesn't change anything that I know of, unless there's some hidden mechanic in the game that it changes. No, that Torrent is still better because maybe that random chance Flip Turn will get a KO with Torrent. Who knows? But yes, change the team to Torrent if you do use this team. Moonblast, Perish Song, Flip Turn, Protect. Very standard. Now the reason I have Moonblast is of course because I think Urshifu is a potentially very scary Pokemon, and it might be a Pokemon you need to get rid of. Also, other Pokemon that are threatening is the potential of Yveltal, which is also really scary for this team potentially. So Moonblast being able to hit that is really nice in general. I didn't think I need a water move if I can go Perish, and I do have ways to deal with Incineroar with my Zygarde using my own Incineroar. While it can be annoying, I think it's just fine. I think Flip Turn was really nice overall for momentum as well. It really complements the Perish, and being able to gain switch advantage is really nice, and then Protect for obvious reasons. Now I went with a very bulky Primarina. Now I wasn't sure how bulky I really wanted. I wanted to make sure that I wanted a lot of defense because of the fact that Zacian Behemoth Blade does so much damage. So I wanted to make sure I had a lot of defense, but I felt like it wasn't really worth it to go like bold on the Primarina, for instance, or Relaxed Nature, because I felt like the extra stat boost for it wasn't really that great. So I ended up just increasing its special defense, which is also really nice for specific matchups like Calyrex or Kyogre, just being able to tank those special attacks pretty well. Just being able to tank those special attacks was still pretty nice for Primarina. It also helps with like Eliki Thunderbolt, a Volt Switch, stuff like that. So overall, just a bulky Primarina being able to survive attacks. There's not really like a specific calc because there is Intimidate, Parting Shot numbers that do have to be accounted for, and there wasn't really anything specific that was necessary right off the bat. Next Pokemon, we have Rillaboom with an Assault Vest, Grassy Surge with Grassy Glide, Drum Beating, Fake Out, and U-Turn. This is a Pokemon that I wasn't originally going to have on the team, but it did help out Zygarde, and mainly Kyogre is a big pain to handle and really difficult otherwise. So had the Assault Vest Rillaboom to help out with the Grassy Surge, Grassy Glide, Drum Beating, Fake Out, U-Turn, Grassy Glide, of course, to help against Kyogres that don't have Serena. If they do have Serena, I do have to use Drum Beating. Fake Out, pretty standard, helps with the Perish, and U-Turn, of course. This team really likes switching and momentum, so pretty standard. So the EV spread is a pretty standard Rillaboom set. It's max HP for maximum bulk, 116 attack adamant. That gives it +2 stat points in attack. I also considered the 196 because it does give a +2 in attack stat as well, while giving higher rolls for Grassy Glide to KO a Scarf Kyogre. But there were chances that I really wanted to make sure that I could switch into Kyogre safer, so I wanted more special defense. I ended up going with 116. I don't think it made that much of a difference between 116 and like 132 for the Kyogre attacks with the Assault Vest, and then 20 defense left over, and then 4 speed. Again, I don't really have any speed control. Drum Beating, I guess you can consider, but it doesn't really matter when you're playing Perish. So overall, that is the Rillaboom EV spread. So Incineroar, a classic on most teams, and Perish especially, with the Figy Berry, Intimidate, Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, Fake Out, and Protect. Since I already had Sitrus Berry on Primarina, I just ended up going with a Figy Berry with Incineroar. I also considered Safety Goggles at one point, but I felt like I could usually play around Amoonguss most of the time. And the recovery, again, is really important on some of these teams and can really make a difference. So I ended up going with a Figy Berry set, and just a standard Incineroar really, except that it has Protect, which is different because of Perish. Now, I originally did try out Throat Chop on the Incineroar. Now, I had Throat Chop over Flare Blitz. I think Protect is very necessary on most Perish teams, and I do think it is necessary here. The thing is with Throat Chop is I needed Throat Chop over Flare Blitz because that's the only slot that you could really run. Again, you really want Protect on a Perish team, and it really does help with Incineroar. And the problem with Throat Chop is it worked against opposing Incineroars, especially with my speed investment. The difficulty was that Rillaboom U-Turn was so difficult to handle if I couldn't eliminate it early, and I had no way to eliminate it early. So I just had to make that trade-off where I had ways to deal with Incineroar. I had 1000 waves on the Zygarde that can trap in Incineroar and usually get 2 big hits off in Incineroar anyway, so I didn't think it was like the biggest concern in the world. I'm not trapping Incineroar with like a Throat Chop, so I ended up going Flare Blitz because again, Rillaboom's a big pain. Zacian also was a big pain that I felt like Flare Blitz was actually kind of necessary sometimes because I did need to Flare Blitz damage actually on Zacian in quite a few situations. So yeah, I ended up going with Flare Blitz instead of Throat Chop, and I feel like Flare Blitz has been significantly better. Do I miss the Throat Chop potential on their Incineroars, on opposing Incineroars? Yes, but I feel like Flare Blitz was more consistent overall. So the EV spread is very, very speedy here. 244 HP with a 4 attack, 20 defense, 116 special defense, and 124 speed. Really, I wanted this to be as specially defensive as possible, but I needed the speed. Again, this was mainly to outspeed so many opposing Incineroars most of the time. So I ended up like speed creeping a lot to like a 124 investment range, which a lot of Incineroars will just not go for at that point. I don't think it's generally worth it on most Incineroars too. I would only do it in this case where I wanted the faster Incineroar. Again, I had Throat Chop previously. It might not even make a difference now, but this also can be a factor in the fact that you could get a faster or slower parting shot off, which could be a big help or it could hurt you immensely. Now, I'm not sure actually which Incineroar would be better on the team. I think it depends on how you play it, but I mean, faster Incineroar means you can parting shot out and gain the switch momentum. The bad side is you could potentially be taking damage on your switch in, which is not great because you want Incineroar to usually sponge up the attacks. But at least with a faster Incineroar, you aren't vulnerable to throw shots usually from opposing Incineroars if you outspeed them. So there are benefits and there are cons. So you have to weigh them and figure out which one you prefer. And for me, I thought the faster Incineroar, just avoiding the throw shot, made enough sense to run a faster Incineroar, but sometimes I would miss the bulk overall. So again, just really depends on preference. Next Pokemon is Gothitelle with the safety goggles. Shadow Tag has the ability Fake Out, Taunt, Skill Swap, and Protect. Now I did run the safety goggles. Originally I was Mental Herb, but then I realized not many Pokemon are using Taunt anymore, so it made no sense to have Mental Herb anyway. So just ended up going goggles. I didn't feel like the recovery was actually as important with Gothitelle, which is kind of funny. You do need on Primarina because you do need the Parasong user alive in a lot of situations, but overall I wasn't really finding an item I really wanted on Gothitelle, and I thought, oh, maybe I could switch into Moongus Spores and then I could taunt it, which made it a lot easier to deal with. So that's the reason I ended up just going with safety goggles, especially since the Moongus has been a bit more common recently. Having the Shadow Tag, of course, is the necessary ability, of course, for trapping. Fake Out, really nice to stall out turns, especially for setting up Primarina. Having 3 Fake Out use is fantastic. A Taunt, of course, to help stop potential follow me's for the Xerneas matchups, parting shots from Incineroar, and of course a Moongus with Spore. So that's the reason why. Skill Swap was a fun little trick that I ended up just seeing that Gothitelle got this generation. I'm like, you know, it'd be pretty funny if I gave my Zygarde Shadow Tag, and it gave me maybe some out opportunities. Like I could give Shadow Tag to Incineroar, like my partner, and it could end up working out pretty favorably sometimes. I never got to showcase it, I think, in any of the episodes. I have gotten it off a few times. I think there's maybe a more useful move that Gothitelle can have. I'm still not a big fan of Ally Switch, but of course, if you want to switch it to Ally Switch, it can be optimal at times. Of course, Hypnosis is another thing. I don't like the inaccuracy. I like consistency usually, so that's why I ended up going with Skill Swap. Overall, the EV spread was pretty similar to the Gothitelle I used early in the format, where I wanted a fast Gothitelle, and I made it 1 point faster than my Incineroar, just so I didn't have my Incineroar and Gothitelle speed tied. That was mainly the only reason I have speed, and of course, I want to outspeed most Incineroars and get a Taunt off before they can parting shot, which is the reason for speed. Dump the rest into max HP because it gives a little bit of extra grassy terrain healing, and of course generalizing the bulk, and then I just put the rest in defense because I can switch in to physical attackers, especially with Intimidate, and tank it. And while Gothitelle already has a really nice special defense stat, and yeah, that was the main reason why. Final Pokemon, Steel Sableye, which actually kind of impressed me throughout the episodes that I played, and it is a Pokemon that I think has a lot of actually good utility on this team. I think it could be improved immensely, but overall it's not bad. Steel Memory, of course, to make it a steel type, with the ability to RKS system to make it a steel type with Imprison, U-turn, multi-attack, and protect. Now I wanted something that can help against Xerneas, and I like the steel typing a lot in general, so it really works defensively. And it was, again, a Pokemon I looked up with Imprison and U-turn, which I thought was really nice, and of course a way to hit Xerneas for a lot of damage. So that is the main reason why I ended up going with Sableye. I think Imprison U-turn, it's fun as a idea on paper. It wasn't really used much in general, although it was nice to have Imprison Protect depending on the situation. If I trapped in something specifically and was able to like make them not able to use Protect and then snipe that threat, which was pretty cool. But overall, I never really got to use the Imprison U-turn for the U-turn specifically. There might actually be better Sableye sets, especially that can specifically handle Xerneas, which is probably the bigger threat. So like Sableye does get some options. Swords Dance is actually not a bad option. Even Substitute might not even be that bad of an option. Parting Shot could actually work a lot with this team as well. So I think Sableye can definitely be explored around quite a bit. We have 172 HP. This is for maximum grassy terrain recovery, as I mentioned before. I wanted the max attack because that Xerneas is a big threat, and I just want to do as much damage as possible, especially since I can follow up with Grassy Glide from Rillaboom even after Intimidate. So multi-attack and the usually Grassy Glide will be able to finish off Xerneas, so that's the reason why I max attack. And then I just added some speed. It allows me to outspeed a lot of Rillabooms mostly, and some neutral max speed base 70s overall. And yeah, that is the Sableye. Now there are quite a few things, as I mentioned before, about this team that I have experimented with Como, as I mentioned before, over like Gothitelle. There are some things that I've been thinking about. I think the Savali set could be changed quite a bit, maybe have more utility, especially to help deal with the Xerneas matchup, because it is very important against the Xerneas matchup. I think Gengar was something that was mentioned in the comments, and Gengar actually kind of interests me, especially with Haze, another Perish Song user. Sludge Bomb could be cool against Xerneas, but I would have to test it a lot. I think Savali is still a really cool Pokemon on this team, but I think there's like multiple different ways you could run Perish. Again, the Water Absorb Politoed I don't think is a bad option at all on this team. I think there's a lot of fun ways you can play Perish, and I think there's a lot of explore opportunities. So if you do want to try out the team, try out some of the other options and let me know in the comments down below if you do try them, and what you like and what you didn't like when experimenting. So let me know. So what are the common lead options with this team? Now, this team is very different from a lot of teams because it's a lot of planning and figuring out what you need to condition yourself for usually Perish Song to win in the end game. Now, lead wise, there are a lot of flexible leads here. I think the most commons that I decide to go with, fake out users are usually always guaranteed. Usually it's Incineroar and Rillaboom. I actually don't lead with Gothitelle too much. I lead Gothitelle in specific matches where I think I have to trap something like Xerneas or maybe Kyogre, so I'll usually have that option. And then otherwise I would just lead a fake out user next to either Primarina or Zygarde most of the time, because of the fact that I'll just go for the 1000 arrows, 1000 wave setup or the Perish Song immediately and try to parting shot out into like the Gothitelle or the Zygarde to trap in something. So that's what I would say I would normally do most of my game plan. Sometimes I'll lead Zygarde Primarina, but it really again depends on the team. And then overall, again, specifically Savali is mainly for Xerneas matchups, and I think there can be a better set with Savali, but that's what I normally did, was like Gothitelle and then either lead Gothitelle Savali right away, or maybe I would lead Gothitelle and pivot into Savali, trying to avoid like Incineroar going for parting shot, for instance. So that is basically how I ended up using the team with leads. And then afterward, it just really depends on the matchup. Usually you'll bring Primarina a lot. You usually always bring Incineroar. Sometimes you won't bring Zygarde actually in certain matchups, and you'll try to just play the old standard Perish trap, which can be hard, but it is a team that requires a lot of navigating and understanding like how to set up for the win con. And that is going to be the end of today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed learning the thought process of what went behind the makings of the Zygarde team. If you want to try it out, make sure you use the rental code. You have 2 weeks to grab this team before it goes away, but there is a paste bin down below in the description as well. And of course, down there, you can check out all my social medias. Leave a like down below, leave a comment down below, and yeah, make sure you do that. And make sure, if you do want to learn more about this team, make sure you check out the back-to-back episodes. If you haven't already, for some reason, make sure you go check out those episodes if you want to learn more about how to play the Zygarde team. But it is a really fun team. Has some things that probably can be improved, but it was just something that I really liked having, and it was a lot of fun to play with. So try it out. Let me know what you think. But otherwise, that's going to be it. Have a great day, people, and until we battle again, I'll catch y'all later.